Get your hands where I can see 'em, girl, or I swear I'll put you down right here. Officer Carl Dempsey's voice cracked like a whip, his flashlight beam slicing through the bright afternoon sunlight, pinning 19-year-old Aisha Carter against the brick wall of the corner store on Juniper Street. His partner, Officer Mike Hargrove, stood a step behind, hand resting on his holster lips, curled into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. I am not doing anything. Aisha's voice trembled. Her palms raised, the plastic bag of groceries dangling from her wrist. The street was bustling with cars passing and pedestrians glancing curiously, the air warm with the scent of summer and tension. Aisha's heart pounded as she tried to keep her eyes on Dempsey, though every instinct screamed at her to run. Don't give me that crap, Dempsey snapped, stepping closer, his bulk looming over her. We got a call about a shoplifter matching your description. Black girl about your age stealing from Mr. Patel's store. You think you can just waltz in here and take whatever you want? Aisha's eyes widened, her voice rising in panic. I didn't steal anything. I paid for this. I have the receipt right here. She gestured toward the bag, but Hargrove cut her off, his tone dripping with mockery. Receipt? Oh, that's cute. You think we're going to believe you printed that up yourself? He chuckled, glancing at Dempsey, who snorted in agreement. What's a girl like you doing out here anyway? Shouldn't you be somewhere? I don't know, causing trouble. Aisha's jaw tightened, her fear giving way to a spark of defiance. I live here. I'm just walking home. I didn't do anything wrong. Live here. Dempsey's eyes narrowed, scanning her up and down from her worn sneakers to the Howard University hoodie she wore. This ain't your neighborhood, sweetheart. You're a long way from the projects. The words hit like a slap, but Aisha held her ground, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I was born here. My family's been on the street longer than you've been wearing that badge. You got no right to treat me like this. Hargrove laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Right. Oh, we got every right. You're lucky we don't haul you in right now for resisting. Keep talking, and we'll add assaulting an officer to the list. Aisha's breath caught her mind racing. She knew how this could go. She'd seen it before, heard the stories from her brother Marcus about cases he'd taken about kids like her who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time, their lives upended by a single encounter. Marcus, her brother, the lawyer. If she could just get to him. Call my brother, she said suddenly, her voice firm. Marcus Carter. He's a lawyer. He'll tell you I'm not who you think I am. The name hit Dempsey like a brick. His eyes flickered just for a moment, but he covered it with a sneer. Marcus Carter. That ambulance chaser who's always on TV stirring up trouble. Yeah, we know him. What's he gonna do? Sue us for doing our job. Hargrove stepped forward, his smirk fading. You're not calling anyone until we say so. Now turn around, hands behind your back. Aisha froze. The cuffs glinted in Dempsey's hand, and the world seemed to narrow to that single moment, the cold metal, the weight of their stares, the knowledge that this could end in a cell or worse. But then from the busy street, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. What the hell is going on here? The man who stepped into the sunlight was tall, broad-shouldered, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the faded storefronts of Juniper Street. Marcus Carter's presence was commanding, his voice low, but carrying the weight of someone who'd spent years bending courtrooms to his will. At 32, he was already a legend in Richmond, Virginia, a civil rights attorney who'd taken on police departments, city councils, and corporations, winning settlements that made headlines and enemies in equal measure. His dark eyes locked onto Dempsey and Hargrove, and the air shifted. Aisha's shoulders sagged with relief, but she didn't move, her hands still raised. Marcus. Step away from my sister's life, Marcus said, his tone calm but laced with steel. Now. Dempsey's grip on the cuffs tightened, his face reddening. This doesn't concern you, Carter. We're handling a situation here. Your sister's a suspect in a theft. Suspect. Marcus's laugh was sharp, devoid of humor. You've got her pinned against a wall for buying groceries. You call that a situation, I call it harassment. Maybe worse. Hargrove bristled, stepping toward Marcus. Watch your mouth, lawyer. You don't get to tell us how to do our job. Marcus didn't flinch. Your job. Your job is to protect and serve, not terrorize a 19-year-old girl who's done nothing wrong. You want to talk suspects? Let's talk about why you're out here targeting my sister instead of, say, the meth lab. We all know's running 2 blocks over. Or is that too much work for you? The accusation hung in the air, and for a moment neither officer spoke. Dempsey's jaw worked, his eyes darting to Hargrove, who looked less certain now, his hand no longer on his holster. The street was busy with passers-by slowing to watch, some pulling out phones to record. Marcus noticed, and his voice dropped deliberate, every word a warning. "You've got an audience now, gentlemen? And I've got a phone." He held up his cell, the camera light blinking red. "This is already streaming to my cloud. You want to keep going? Make a scene, because I promise you this will be on every news outlet in Virginia by morning. And I'll personally make sure Internal Affairs has a copy." Dempsey's face twisted, a mix of rage and calculation. He knew Marcus's reputation, knew the man didn't bluff. Hargrove shifted uncomfortably, muttering under his breath, "This is bullshit, Carl. Let's go." "Not yet," Dempsey snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. He turned back to Aisha, pointing a finger. "You're lucky your brother showed up, girl. Next time you won't be." "There won't be a next time," Marcus cut in, stepping between Aisha and the officers. "You come near her again, and I'll have your badges." "That's not a threat. That's a guarantee." The standoff lasted another heartbeat before Dempsey spat on the ground and turned away, muttering something Aisha couldn't catch. Hargrove followed, casting a final glare at Marcus before the two climbed into their cruiser and peeled out tires, screeching against the asphalt. Aisha let out a shaky breath, her knees buckling, as Marcus caught her arm. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, all traces of the courtroom warrior gone. She nodded, though her hands still trembled. "Yeah, I didn't do anything, Marcus, I swear." "I know," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. "I know. Come on, let's get you home." As they walked down Juniper Street, the weight of what had happened settled over Aisha like a storm cloud. She was safe for now. But the look in Dempsey's eyes, the venom in his voice, told her this wasn't over. Not for her, and not for Marcus. The Carter household was a modest two-story on the edge of Richmond's historic district, a place that had been in their family for 3 generations. Inside, it was warm and cluttered, filled with the kind of lived-in chaos that came with a family that loved fiercely and fought just as hard. Photos lined the walls, graduations, birthdays. Aisha's high school track meets Marcus's law school ceremony. Their mother, Elaine, was in the kitchen when they walked in, her hands dusted with flour from the cornbread she was prepping for dinner. Aisha, Marcus, Elaine's smile faded as she caught the look on their faces. "What's wrong?" Aisha hesitated, but Marcus didn't. He recounted the incident in clipped, precise detail, his voice steady, but his eyes burning. By the time he finished, Elaine's hands were clenched, her lips a thin line. "Those bastards," she whispered, pulling Aisha into a hug. "You're okay, baby. You're okay." "I'm fine," Mama Aisha mumbled, though the words felt hollow. She wasn't fine, not really. The fear, the humiliation, it clung to her like damp clothes, heavy and cold. Elaine turned to Marcus, her voice sharp. "What are you going to do about this, Marcus? You know those two, Dempsey and Hargrove. They've been trouble for years, always picking on folks who can't fight back." "I'm handling it," Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "I've got the video. I'm meeting with a contact at the DA's office tomorrow, and I'll file a formal complaint with Internal Affairs. This isn't their first rodeo, Mama. They've got a history." "A history?" Aisha frowned, pulling back from her mother's embrace. "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated, glancing at Elaine before answering. "Dempsey's been written up before excessive force racial profiling. Nothing stuck, but the complaints are there. Hargrove's newer, but he's Dempsey's shadow. They've been shaking down kids in the neighborhood for years, especially Black and Latino teens. Small stuff, petty theft, loitering, anything they can pin on someone to boost their arrest numbers." Aisha's stomach twisted. Why hasn't anyone stopped them? Marcus's jaw tightened. Because the system protects its own. Cops cover for cops. Witnesses get scared off. Evidence disappears. But not this time. They messed with the wrong family. Elaine nodded, her eyes fierce. "You make sure they pay Marcus. For Aisha. For all the others." "I will," he promised, but as he met Aisha's gaze, she saw something else in his eyes, worry. Not for himself, but for her. For what this might mean if it escalated. That night, Aisha lay awake in her room, the sunlight long faded, the streetlight casting shadows across her ceiling. She replayed the encounter over and over, the officers' words, their sneers, the cuffs glinting in Dempsey's hand. She thought of Marcus out there, fighting battles she couldn't fully grasp, and the weight of it all pressed down on her. She wasn't just a kid anymore. She was a target, and that knowledge changed everything. The next morning, Marcus was gone before Aisha woke, leaving a note on the kitchen table, meeting with DA. "Stay home today. Call me if you need me." Monsieur Aisha stared at the note, her coffee growing cold in her hands. Stay home, like she was a child, like she couldn't handle herself. But the truth was she didn't want to go out. Not yet. The thought of walking down Juniper Street, of seeing that cruiser again, made her chest tighten. Instead, she busied herself with schoolwork, her laptop open, to a sociology paper she'd been putting off. But her mind kept drifting, the words blurring on the screen. She thought of her friends, of the stories they'd shared, cops stopping them for no reason, searches that turned up, nothing, threats disguised as warnings. She'd always listened, nodded, but it hadn't felt real. Not until now. By noon, her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Kayla. Heard what happened. You okay? Want me to come over? Aisha typed a quick reply. I'm good, just laying low. Talk later, but the words felt like a lie. She wasn't good. She was angry, scared, and something else she couldn't name, a mix of defiance and dread that made her want to scream. When Marcus returned that evening, his face was grim but determined. He sat Aisha and Elaine down at the kitchen table, his laptop open, to a draft of the complaint he'd filed. It's done, he said, his voice steady. The complaint's with Internal Affairs, and I've got a meeting with the police chief next week. The DA's office is reviewing the video, and I've got a reporter friend at the Times-Dispatch who's interested. This is going public. Aisha's eyes widened. Public, Marcus, what if they come after us? They won't, he said, though his tone wasn't as certain as his words. They're not stupid. They know I've got leverage, and if they try anything, it'll only dig their hole deeper. Elaine crossed her arms, her voice sharp. You trust the chief to do the right thing after all these years? Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't trust anyone, but the chief's got political ambitions, and he knows a scandal like this could tank him. He'll push for an investigation to cover his own ass. And with the video, they can't just sweep it under the rug. Aisha stared at the table, her fingers tracing the grain of the wood. What if they don't get fired? What if they just get a slap on the wrist? Marcus reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Then we keep fighting. We don't stop until they're gone. I promise. But as the days turned into weeks, Aisha began to wonder if promises were enough. The investigation moved slowly, a bureaucratic slog that tested everyone's patience. Marcus kept Aisha updated, but the details were sparse: interviews with witnesses, reviews of body cam footage, endless paperwork. Dempsey and Hargrove were placed on administrative leave, a small victory that felt hollow when Aisha saw their cruiser still patrolling the neighborhood, their faces smug behind the glass. Meanwhile, the story broke. The Richmond Times-Dispatch ran a front-page article complete with stills from Marcus's video and quotes from Aisha's statement. The headline was, Damning Local Teen Harassed by Police, a Pattern of Abuse. Social media erupted hashtags like #Short Justice for Aisha, trending locally with activists organizing protests outside the precinct. Marcus was in his element, fielding calls from reporters, meeting with community leaders, building a case that couldn't be ignored. But the attention came at a cost. Aisha's phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, others vicious. Anonymous accounts called her a liar, a troublemaker, worse. One message sent from a burner account read, Watch your back, girl, you and your brother. She showed it to Marcus, who filed it with the police, but the fear lingered, a shadow that followed her everywhere. At school, things weren't much better. Whispers followed her in the halls, classmates staring as if she were a headline come to life. Her professors were kind, offering extensions on assignments, but it only made her feel more isolated. Kayla tried to keep things normal, dragging her to coffee shops or study sessions, but even that felt strained, the weight of the investigation hanging over everything. One night, unable to sleep, Aisha slipped downstairs and found Marcus at the kitchen table, surrounded by legal pads and case files. His tie was loosened, his eyes bloodshot, but he smiled when he saw her. Can't sleep, he asked, pushing a chair out for her. She shook her head, sitting across from him. Just thinking about everything. He nodded, leaning back. Yeah, it's a lot. Marcus, she hesitated, her voice small. What if we lose? What if they get away with it? He didn't answer right away, his gaze distant. When he spoke, his words were measured, each one chosen with care. We won't lose. Not in the way you're thinking. Even if they don't get fired, we're shining a light on them. On the system. That's a win, Aisha. It's not the one we want, but it's something. She frowned, unconvinced. It doesn't feel like enough. It's not, he admitted, but it's a start. Change doesn't happen all at once. It's a fight every day, and we don't get to stop. Not you, not me, not Mama. We carry this for the ones who can't. Aisha's throat tightened, and she looked away, blinking back tears. I just want it to be over. I know, he said softly. Me too. The hearing came 3 months after the incident, a closed-door session at the police headquarters. Marcus had prepared Aisha for weeks, coaching her on what to say, how to stay calm under pressure. She'd testify before a review board alongside Marcus, who'd present the video, the witness statements, and a litany of prior complaints against Dempsey and Hargrove. The officers would have their own representation, a union lawyer, known for getting cops off the hook. The morning of the hearing, Aisha stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the wrinkles from her blazer. She looked older than she felt, her eyes shadowed but steady. Marcus knocked on her door, already dressed in his suit, his expression unreadable. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her stomach churned. "Ready?" The hearing room was stark, all fluorescent lights and beige walls, the air thick with tension. The review board consisted of 5 members, 3 senior officers, a civilian liaison, and a city attorney, each stone-faced as Marcus began his presentation. He was methodical, devastating, laying out the timeline of the incident, the pattern of misconduct, the impact on Aisha. The video played on a projector, Dempsey's voice filling the room, his words as sharp as they'd been that day. Aisha's testimony came next. She sat at the table, her hands clasped, her voice steady, despite the eyes boring into her. She recounted every detail, the flashlight, the cuffs, the slurs disguised as questions. When the union lawyer tried to trip her up, suggesting she'd been uncooperative, she held her ground, her voice rising. "I was scared," she said, meeting his gaze. "I was alone and they treated me like a criminal for no reason. I didn't do anything wrong. They did." Marcus squeezed her hand under the table, a silent "good job." Dempsey and Hargrove testified last, their stories rehearsed, their tones contrite. Dempsey claimed he'd been following protocol, responding to a legitimate call about a shoplifter. Hargrove echoed him, insisting Aisha had been evasive, justifying their actions. Neither apologized, though Dempsey's eyes flicked to Aisha, once a flash of something dark passing over his face. The board deliberated for a week, an eternity that left Aisha on edge, jumping at every notification on her phone. When the decision came, Marcus called her and Elaine into the living room, his face unreadable. "They're gone," he said simply. "Fired, effective immediately." Aisha's breath caught relief flooding her. "For real." "For real," Marcus said, a rare smile breaking through. "The board found them in violation of multiple department policies, excessive force, racial bias, failure to de-escalate. The video was the nail in the coffin. They couldn't spin it." Elaine pulled Aisha into a hug, tears in her eyes. "Thank God. Thank you, Marcus." But Aisha's relief was tempered, her mind racing. What happens now to them? Marcus's smile faded. "They're out of the department, but they could appeal. Union might back them. And they'll probably find work somewhere else, private security, another precinct out of state. That's how it goes. But they're done here, and their records will follow them." Aisha nodded, processing. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the clean victory she'd imagined. But it was something. A step. A message. That night, the Carters celebrated quietly, just the 3 of them, with Elaine's cornbread and a bottle of sparkling cider. They laughed, reminisced, and for the first time in months, Aisha felt the weight lift, if only a little. Outside Juniper Street was quiet, the streetlights casting a soft glow over the neighborhood. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't safe, not entirely. But it was home. And Aisha knew deep down that the fight wasn't over. Not for her, not for Marcus, not for any of them. But for now they'd won. And that was enough.